My name is Margaret Whitley. I am 78 years old, and I've lived most of my life in a modest two-bedroom house on the edge of Cortland, New York. I was a schoolteacher for nearly 4 decades, retired at 65, and buried my husband Gerald 3 years later. I've lived alone ever since. I have one child, my son Jeremy, and for most of my life I believed raising him was my greatest purpose, my greatest joy, and, for a long time, my greatest pride. But that was before he humiliated me in a way no mother should ever experience. It was a quiet Thursday morning in early June. The birds outside were chirping like they always did, and I had just poured myself a cup of chamomile tea when I noticed the envelope wedged into my screen door. I didn't think much of it. Bills come, junk mail piles up, that's the routine of an old woman's life. But this envelope was thick, heavy, and it had my son's name on the return label. For a brief, stupid moment I smiled. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was finally writing to me. Maybe he wanted to apologize for the silence. Maybe there were wedding invitations inside. He had mentioned some girl over a year ago, and though he never said much, I had hoped things were moving in a good direction. I dreamed of sitting at his wedding, clapping through the toasts, hugging him afterward and telling his new bride, "Welcome to the family." I opened the envelope with my thumb. The first thing I noticed was a folded piece of white paper with my name scrawled across the top. It wasn't a letter. Not really. It was a note, written in my son's familiar slanted handwriting. "Mom, here is a portion of the final bill from the wedding. Since you couldn't attend, this is the least you could do. You should feel lucky to contribute to the most important day of my life. Thanks in advance." No greeting, no love, no explanation. Just that. I lowered the note and saw the invoice beneath it, 3 pages long. Venue rental, $24,000. Catering, $18,500. Decor, $7,200. Photography, $6,800. Cake, $3,700. Wedding planner, $12,000. Few other things. Tally at the bottom, $80,542.73. And he had written a small star beside the total with the words, "Please make the check out to Cassandra Maxwell." Cassandra. So that was her name. The girl I had never met. The woman who now wore the title of my daughter-in-law, but couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone and say hello. I dropped the envelope and sat down. My chest tightened. I wasn't having a heart attack, not physically, but something else inside me broke, shattered. I had not just been excluded from the wedding. I had been dismissed from my own family. I hadn't heard a word about a date, a venue, a guest list. Jeremy hadn't called me in months. No visit. No update, not even a text message. And now he wanted money. Without explanation. Without shame. I sat for a long while, unmoving. The cup of tea went cold in my hand. I kept staring at the invoice like it was a cruel joke that might change if I blinked enough times. But it didn't. The thing about getting older is that people assume you're getting weaker. They forget what you've survived. They forget who you were. They forget that a woman who raised a boy on her own, put him through college by selling off every last piece of family jewelry, and worked extra hours even after retirement just to keep the heat on. That woman is not weak. She's just been quiet. Till now. I stood up and walked slowly to my bedroom. My knees ached and my hands trembled, but I reached into the top of my closet and pulled down the red suitcase I hadn't used since Gerald's funeral. I laid it on the bed and opened it like I had a purpose. Which suddenly I did. That moment, standing over the suitcase, I wasn't Margaret the retired teacher. I wasn't Margaret the grieving widow. I wasn't even Margaret the forgotten mother. I was Margaret Whitley, the woman who built everything Jeremy ever had. And now I was going to unbuild it, piece by piece. But before I could carry out what I knew had to be done, I had to understand how I got here. How did my only child grow into a man who could look at me as nothing more than a wallet? How did I become so irrelevant in the life I once sacrificed everything to create? So I went back to the beginning. Jeremy was born when I was 33. Gerald and I had tried for years with no success. When he finally came, it was like the world had shifted into color. Gerald cried when he held him for the first time. I still remember the way his hands trembled against the swaddle. We named him Jeremy Thomas Whitley, after Gerald's father. He was a bright boy, curious, sweet, and for the first 10 years life was good. Then Gerald was diagnosed with colon cancer. By the time we caught it, it had already spread. I spent nights at the hospital and days in the classroom. Jeremy spent a lot of time alone. Gerald passed when Jeremy was 12. After that, things shifted. Jeremy became quiet, distant. He was still a good student, but the light behind his eyes began to dim. I tried everything, therapy, after-school clubs, extra love, but nothing could replace what he lost. Still I pushed through. I sold Gerald's old coin collection to pay for Jeremy's braces. I gave up my dream of traveling Europe to buy him a decent used car when he got into SUNY Binghamton. I sent him money every month while he was at school, even when it meant eating instant noodles for dinner myself. I was proud of him, even when he stopped calling as often, even when he only came home for Christmas, and sometimes not even then, even when he told me casually that he was seeing someone but, "It's not serious." That was the only time he ever mentioned Cassandra. I didn't know how serious it had become. Not until that Thursday morning, standing in my kitchen, holding a bill for a wedding I hadn't even known existed. I picked up my phone and tried to call him. Straight to voicemail. I sent a text. "Jeremy, I got the envelope. Please call me." No reply. The next day I called again. This time it rang twice, then voicemail. I left a message. "I just want to talk. Please." Nothing. That weekend I got a call from my neighbor's daughter, Tasha, who follows Jeremy on Instagram. "Mrs. Whitley," she said carefully, "I saw some pictures from a wedding. Was Jeremy's wedding in Napa Valley?" Napa, California. I sat down again. "Yes," I whispered. "I think it was." Tasha offered to send me the pictures. Said no. I wasn't ready to see him in a tux, smiling with that girl, surrounded by people clapping and dancing, while I sat at home folding laundry. I wasn't ready to see what a perfect family I had been erased from. But I was ready to act. They thought I was just a harmless old woman. They had no idea what was coming. If you believe no mother should ever be treated as an afterthought, like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will reveal how Cassandra entered our lives, and the very first sign I ignored. Don't miss it. It's strange the moments we remember. Not the grand events but the quiet ones. Like the first time I ever heard her name, Cassandra. I remember it clearly. It was a rainy Saturday 2 years ago. Jeremy had come by unannounced. That alone was unusual. He hadn't visited in nearly 5 months, and when he did, it was usually rushed, always with some excuse to leave. But that afternoon he actually stayed for dinner. I made pot roast the way he liked it growing up, with soft carrots and buttery potatoes. For a brief moment I felt like we were a family again. He even laughed, really laughed, when I told him about old Mrs. Finnegan down the street who'd installed a fake owl on her porch because she thought it would ward off negative energy. And then, just as he was scraping his plate, he mentioned her. "I've been seeing someone. Her name's Cassandra." The words floated so gently I almost missed them. I smiled and set my fork down. "Oh, that's wonderful, Jeremy. Tell me about her." He shrugged. "She's cool. Works in branding or marketing or something. We met at a tech conference in DC. She's smart. Pretty." There was no warmth in the way he said it. No spark in his eyes. It was like reading a resume aloud. "Is it serious?" Another shrug. "I guess." And that was it. He never brought her up again. Never showed me a photo. Never invited her over. I should have pushed. I should have asked more questions. But I didn't want to scare him off. I'd waited so long for a night like this, and I didn't want to ruin it. If I'd known that was the first and last time he'd ever mentioned Cassandra to me, I would have asked everything. But it's always easier to see the signs when it's too late. The next few months passed in silence. Jeremy didn't return for Thanksgiving or Christmas. When I called, he said they were traveling or that he was slammed with work. The calls grew shorter. Eventually they stopped. Then, one Sunday in church, I overheard something that should have hit me harder than it did. "Did you hear about Margaret's boy? Just got engaged. Saw it on Facebook." My head turned so fast I felt a pinch in my neck. The woman speaking was Evelyn, a sweet old gossip with a habit of getting things half right. I smiled and nodded like I already knew. But inside my chest turned hollow. Engaged. I hadn't been told. No call. No message. Not even a forwarded photo. I kept my smile until the service ended, then went home and locked myself in the bathroom and cried so hard I shook. Still, I made excuses for him. Maybe it was sudden. Maybe he was planning a surprise. Maybe he'd been meaning to call. Maybe. But excuses can only hold you together for so long. I began writing him letters. Handwritten, just like when he was away at college. I thought maybe the physical act of reading something in my handwriting would soften his heart. I wrote once a month. Never accusatory. Always warm. Just wanted to say I love you. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Would love to meet Cassandra sometime. Let me know when you're free. I never got a reply. I didn't stop writing though. Somewhere deep down I still believed the boy I raised was in there. That he'd wake up and remember who I was. The woman who stayed up nights while he had the flu, who clapped at every middle school recital, who stood by him when he flunked his first semester of college. The woman who worked weekends just to help him pay off his loans. The woman who never remarried because she wanted all her love to go to him. But instead I got silence. Until that envelope arrived. And now I had a name. Cassandra Maxwell. I looked her up, of course. I'm old, not out of touch. The internet was a window, and I pried it wide open. A quick search brought up her LinkedIn profile. Harvard grad, worked in luxury brand consulting, CEO of a boutique firm in Manhattan. Photos of her in sleek dresses, sipping wine at rooftop events. Her arms wrapped around Jeremy in one picture like a prize she'd won. They looked good together. The stage. Everything felt posed. Then I found the wedding website. It was still live though private. But the main banner was visible. Jeremy and Cassandra, April 12th. Napa Valley. A celebration of love and elegance. April 12th. It had already happened. I felt my breath catch. I stared at the photo of the vineyard. The golden lights strung through the trees. The tables covered in roses and candles. There was a section that said, "Our story." And it began like this. We knew from the moment we met. We were a perfect match. Family is everything to us. And this wedding wouldn't be possible without the love and support of those who made us who we are. Family is everything. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. More like a scratch in my throat. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not even in the special thanks. But you know whose was. Gerald Whitley. My late husband. There was an entire section dedicated to honoring Jeremy's father, the man who shaped him into who he is today. I blinked at the screen. That was the final twist of the knife. The man who had been gone since Jeremy was 12. A good man, yes, but not the one who stayed. That was me. And I had been erased. But if they thought they could discard me like an expired library book, they were wrong. I spent the next few days in silence, but not in mourning. I was planning. I called a lawyer I used to teach. Her name was Marie Holtz, and she was now a top estate attorney in Albany. I told her I needed advice. We met for tea. "Margaret," she said after I laid everything out, "do you have any assets tied to Jeremy?" "Not anymore," I said. "I made sure of that 2 years ago when he stopped calling. I just need to know if I can legally respond to this invoice." She reviewed the document Jeremy sent. "This isn't a contract. It's just an invoice and a handwritten note. You don't owe him anything." "Good," I said. "Because I'm not giving them a penny. But I'm not finished yet. I want them to feel what I felt. Not just pain. Disappointment. Shock." She raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" I smiled but didn't answer. "Because here's the thing. When people think of revenge, they think of fire and fury. But me, I believe in precision. If Jeremy and Cassandra thought I was irrelevant, I would remind them exactly who I was, and what I was capable of. And it would start with something small. The wedding venue. The one in Napa Valley. They had used La Rocca Estate, a luxury vineyard known for its exclusivity. I made a few calls, posed as a prospective client, learned everything I needed to know, including the fact that they were using some of the wedding footage in their new ad campaign. You know what that means? Image rights. Guess whose face appeared in a background shot? From an old family photo Jeremy submitted for their montage. And guess what? They hadn't secured my permission. That was just the beginning. But the real revenge, that came when Cassandra tried to pitch a 6-figure brand deal. And I bought the domain name she needed to close it. Yes, you read that right. But to understand how that played out, you need to know what happened when I finally saw Cassandra, in person for the first time. It was the confrontation I had been waiting for. And it didn't go how she expected. If you're ready to see what happens when a mother takes matters into her own hands, like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter is where the real payback begins. You won't want to miss it. The day I saw Cassandra in person, it was raining. Not a soft, romantic rain like you see in movies, but cold, gray sheets that slapped against the pavement like the sky was angry. Fitting, I thought. It matched the feeling in my bones. She didn't know I was coming. I had learned through a little online digging and 2 phone calls that Cassandra Maxwell hosted monthly Power Women in Branding mixers at a luxury co-working space in Manhattan. Open bar. Guest speakers. Self-congratulations served on silver trays. And, importantly, open to the public with RSVP. RSVP'd under my full name. Not that she'd recognize it. After all, I was just the mother-in-law Jeremy didn't mention. I dressed carefully that morning. Not in anything flashy. Just a navy blue blazer, slacks, and the pearl earrings Gerald gave me for our 25th anniversary. I wanted to look like someone who belonged. Someone sharp. Someone unforgettable. The lobby of the building was a forest of glass and chrome. Sleek women in Louboutin heels clicked across marble floors while sipping overpriced coffee. I held my small black clutch tightly, trying not to let my knees betray me. I wasn't nervous, I was alive. When the elevator doors opened on the 22nd floor, a tall blonde woman greeted me with a clipboard and a forced smile. Name? Margaret Whitley, I said with a nod. She scanned her list. Ah yes, welcome. You're right on time. The room buzzed with conversation. I could smell perfume and ambition in the air. The type of room where people smiled too wide and listened too little. And at the center of it all, there she was. Cassandra Maxwell. She wore a fitted white blazer over a soft pink blouse. Her hair twisted into a sleek low bun. She was talking to 2 other women near the bar, laughing that smooth, practiced laugh I had heard in her promo videos online. I approached quietly, not to start a scene, but to introduce myself. She turned as I neared her, probably expecting another fan or a potential client. Her eyes scanned me, not with recognition, but with the polite detachment of someone who judged worth by wardrobe. Hi, I said calmly, offering my hand. I'm Margaret, Jeremy's mother. Her smile froze. Her pupils shrank. Oh, she said flatly, her voice dropping half an octave. Margaret. There it was. That moment of silent panic. I leaned in slightly. You look surprised. You shouldn't be. You sent me an $80,000 invoice. I figured the least I could do was say hello in person. The women around her shifted uncomfortably. One slowly drifted away. Cassandra recovered quickly. I think this might not be the right time. Oh, don't worry, I said sweetly. I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm here to observe. After all, family is everything, right? Isn't that what your wedding website said? She flinched just slightly. Her smile returned tighter this time. Look, Margaret, I'm sorry about the way things went. Jeremy and I, things were moving fast. We wanted something small. Intimate. Small. $80,000 worth of small. She said nothing. I could feel her trying to maintain control to keep the image intact. But something in her eyes was cracking. Just so you know, I continued softly, I'm not angry anymore. I'm focused. You see, I've lived long enough to know one thing very well. People always reveal themselves. Eventually. Her brows furrowed. What does that mean? It means, I said, pulling a small envelope from my clutch and placing it gently on the table beside her. You might want to review this before your next big pitch meeting. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She knew whatever was inside had teeth. It was a cease and desist letter, prepared by Marie, my lawyer, regarding the unauthorized use of my likeness in La Rocca's promotional material. The vineyard had apologized profusely, of course, and removed the video. But Cassandra didn't know that yet. I let her stew. And then I walked away. But that was only the beginning. You see, while she was busy curating her perfect life and burning bridges she didn't know she'd need, I had been playing the long game. I started with the domain name. Cassandra-Maxwell.com. Simple, direct, and surprisingly unclaimed. Bought it for $12.99. Then I purchased a few more. CassandraMaxwellBrand.com, CassandraMConsulting.net, CassieMaxwell.org. All the ones her firm might want to use. And on those sites, I put up placeholder pages. Nothing defamatory. Just a plain message. This domain is currently under maintenance by its rightful owner. It didn't take long for her assistant to email me. Hi Margaret. I believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding domain ownership. Ms. Maxwell would love to resolve this quickly and privately. What's your asking price? I replied with 2 words. An apology. The next day I got a voice message. It was Jeremy. His voice was tight, irritated. Mom, what are you doing? Cassandra's been getting emails all day. People are asking if her company's shutting down. This is beyond petty. I didn't respond. So he called again. Look, if this is about the wedding, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far. Still I stayed silent. Then he texted. Can we talk? Please. And finally I answered. I said. In person. My house. Tomorrow. Bring Cassandra. They showed up the next evening. And Jeremy didn't look like himself. His eyes were baggy, his jaw clenched. Cassandra wore a tight black dress and didn't meet my gaze. I led them to the living room. Offered them tea. They declined. Why are you doing this? Jeremy asked. His tone was defensive, almost angry. I could ask you the same, I said. Why didn't you invite me to your wedding? He looked down. We just didn't think it was your scene. I laughed bitterly. Your scene. I raised you. Put you through school. I gave up everything for you. And you didn't think I deserved to witness the happiest day of your life. Jeremy's jaw moved like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. Cassandra jumped in. Look, Margaret, we can't undo what's been done. But we'd appreciate it if you'd stop interfering with the company. It's affecting deals. You mean your deals? Yes. Yes. I leaned forward. Cassandra, I've done nothing illegal. But if you want those domains, we can make a trade. Her face lit up. How much? Smiled. Not money. Jeremy groaned. Mom, come on. I looked at both of them straight in the eye. You will write me a formal apology. Letter. From both of you. You will acknowledge the disrespect, the exclusion, the shame you put me through. You will not insult me by offering money. And if I'm satisfied with that apology, I'll transfer the domains back to you. No charge. Cassandra's mouth opened, then closed. Jeremy nodded slowly. Fine. I want the letter in my hand within 7 days, I added. Signed and dated. They left without another word. And you know what? They sent it. 4 pages long. Signed by both. It was the most honest thing I had received from Jeremy in years. I didn't cry when I read it. But I smiled. Real one. Not because I'd won. Because I'd finally been seen. But don't think this is where the story ends. Because just when I thought things were settling, a reporter showed up at my door. holding a folder with photos of Cassandra in a situation that could destroy everything. If you're ready to see how far this rabbit hole goes, like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will change everything you thought you knew about Cassandra Maxwell. The knock came at 9:12 a.m. sharp. I had just finished watering the gardenia bushes by the porch and was still wearing my housecoat when I heard the sound. Firm. Deliberate. Not like the UPS man. Not like a neighbor. When I opened the door, a tall woman with blunt-cut curls, a beige trench coat, and serious eyes stood there holding a thin black leather folder. She looked about 40, with a face that had seen too much truth to waste time on lies. "Mrs. Whitley?" she asked politely. "Yes. My name is Dana Wexler. I'm a freelance investigative journalist. I know this is unusual, but I'd like to talk to you about your daughter-in-law." My heart sank, but I kept my face steady. "I think you should leave." "I promise I'm not here to cause trouble," she said, her voice calm and even. "I just thought you deserved to know what I've uncovered. And I believe it could affect your son's life. In ways you might not expect." She lifted the folder slightly. Curiosity won over caution. "Open the door." "Come in," I said. We sat at the dining table. She declined coffee but accepted water. She was precise, composed, the kind of woman who didn't rattle easily. She opened the folder and slid a few photographs across the table. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw her, Cassandra, in a dim restaurant booth, leaning across the table, kissing a man that wasn't Jeremy. It wasn't even subtle. Her hand was cupping his face. His palm was on her thigh. The timestamp on the photo was dated March 14th, less than a month before the wedding. Dana watched my expression carefully. "I've been investigating Cassandra Maxwell for nearly a year," she began. "She's one of several high-profile women being considered for a corporate board position with a Fortune 100 company. My story started as a profile piece. It turned into something else." She pulled out another sheet. An email transcript. This was leaked by a former assistant. It's a conversation between Cassandra and a man named Logan March. "He's the one in the photo." "Who is he?" asked. "Investor. Entrepreneur. And her ex-fiancé." Blinked. "Ex?" Dana nodded. "They were together until 2 years ago. Broke off the engagement. Or so the public believed. But the timeline overlaps with her relationship with Jeremy." I felt my stomach churn. "She never ended it with Logan, did she?" "No," Dana said. "Not completely. What's worse, he bankrolled a good portion of her company. In exchange, she granted him silent equity." I shook my head, disbelief creeping in. "So my son married a woman who's still in business, and in bed with her ex?" Dana hesitated. "It looks that way." She pushed another photo across the table. Cassandra leaving a Manhattan hotel at 6 a.m. on April 10th. 2 days before the wedding. Logan was walking 10 feet behind her. My hands trembled. I had wanted revenge. But this was betrayal on a scale I hadn't imagined. "I don't know what to do with this," I whispered. Dana leaned forward. "I think Jeremy deserves to know." I nodded slowly. "Yes. But not from you." "I figured as much," she said, standing. "That's why I came to you." I walked her to the door. "Thank you, Ms. Wexler." She gave me a small smile. "I admire what you've done. Most people your age would have stayed quiet." I watched her leave, then locked the door behind her. My hands clutched the photos like evidence in a trial I hadn't asked to preside over. What now? Call Jeremy. Confront Cassandra again. Hand over the folder like a bomb and watch it explode. Well, that's what they'd expect. Instead, I called someone else. Her name was Claire. She had been Jeremy's girlfriend in college. His first real love. A sweet girl with chestnut curls and warm eyes who used to call me Mama Whitley. I hadn't spoken to her in over a decade, but we still exchanged holiday cards. I found her number in an old address book and dialed. "Hello, Claire. It's Margaret Whitley." Was. Mrs. Whitley. Oh my goodness, it's been years. Smiled. I know this is out of the blue. But, do you have time to talk? She did. And by the end of that call, I knew exactly how I was going to reveal the truth. Not through confrontation, but through connection. You see, Cassandra built her world on image. On perfection. She moved among people who feared public humiliation more than personal failure. And I was going to dismantle her image brick by brick. Starting with the one place she couldn't control. The press. But not Dana's article. Well, that would be too slow. I had something more direct in mind. Jeremy was hosting a private branding brunch with Cassandra in 2 weeks. Invite only. 50 guests. Investors. Clients. Family. All of it streamed live on Instagram. And guess who received a digital invitation? Claire. She forwarded it to me asking, "Should I go?" I said, "Yes. But we're going together." Claire gasped. "What?" "Dress sharp. Smile big. And bring the man you're dating now. He's tall, right?" "Very," she giggled nervously. "Good. We're going to crash a brunch. And ruin a brand. Because here's the thing. You can ignore your mother. You can bill her. You can insult her. But when you marry someone who betrays both blood and love, the consequences come served cold." But what happened at that brunch was bigger than I ever expected. Jeremy stood up, clinked his glass, and made an announcement that stunned the entire room. And it had nothing to do with Cassandra. If you're still with me, like, comment and subscribe, because next chapter is where loyalty, love, and lies collide. You won't believe what Jeremy said next. The brunch was held at the Gilded Lily, an upscale restaurant nestled inside a glass atrium in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows, crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed everything. The kind of place that whispers wealth even in silence. I hadn't been in a space like that since Gerald's retirement gala, decades ago. But I wasn't intimidated. I was prepared. Claire met me at my hotel room that morning, her hand trembling slightly as she sipped her coffee. She looked stunning in a soft cream jumpsuit, understated makeup, and a confidence I hadn't seen in her as a girl. Time had turned her into a woman of grace. Her fiancé, Darren, joined us 15 minutes later. 6'2", clean-shaven, warm smile. The kind of man who didn't need to speak loudly to command a room. I liked him instantly. We arrived at the brunch exactly 7 minutes late. On purpose. The room was full. Mostly investors, entrepreneurs, influencers, and sleekly dressed guests pretending to enjoy each other while scrolling their phones. A long floral table stretched across the space like a runway. At the far end sat Jeremy and Cassandra, perfectly poised. When we entered, Jeremy noticed Claire first. He stood abruptly, mouth parting in confusion. His head tilted, trying to make sense of it. Then his eyes landed on me. They widened. Cassandra turned too, and when she saw me, her grip on the champagne flute tightened. I saw the tendons in her hand flex. Her smile froze. Claire gave a graceful wave. Darren smiled coolly. I nodded and walked with them to our seats. They didn't dare stop us, because no matter how much they wanted to, it would have caused a scene. And Cassandra couldn't afford a scene. Not in front of investors. Not on a live stream. The hostess, oblivious to the tension, offered us flutes of orange juice and small plates of truffle eggs and smoked salmon. I sipped slowly. And then it began. Jeremy stood. Clinked his glass. "Thank you everyone for being here," he said. His voice was confident, smooth. The voice of a man playing a part. This brunch isn't just about celebrating Cassandra's latest partnership with Lumina Group. It's about honoring the people who've helped us build something powerful. Cassandra beamed beside him. Jeremy continued. And that includes family. Which is why today, I want to introduce you all to someone very important. He turned to me. My heart skipped. "This is my mother, Margaret Whitley." Gasps fluttered like moths across the room. Cassandra's head whipped toward him. Her eyes said everything. "What are you doing?" He kept going. "She raised me on her own. Gave up everything so I could get where I am. And until recently, I lost sight of that. He paused, cleared his throat. I made some decisions that hurt her. I excluded her from the wedding. I didn't even invite her. And then, his voice cracked just slightly, I had the nerve to send her the bill. The room froze. Someone actually dropped their fork. I was selfish, Jeremy said, softer now. I forgot who stood beside me before anyone else did. But this woman, my mother, she reminded me. Not with anger. With grace. He turned to me directly. Mom. I'm sorry. Silence. And then a smattering of applause. I didn't cry. Not then. But something in my chest loosened. A knot that had been pulled too tight for too long. Cassandra's face was stone. Claire leaned toward me and whispered, Did you know he was going to say all this? I shook my head. Not a clue. But it wasn't over. Jeremy looked at Cassandra next. And I need to also be honest about something else, he said. About transparency. Her eyes widened. Subtly, she shook her head. But Jeremy didn't stop. I found out some things recently. Things about business partnerships, past relationships, things that weren't disclosed to me. Few people murmured. Cassandra rose from her chair. Jeremy. Not now. He ignored her. I know about Logan March. Dead silence. The entire room went still, as if every breath had been sucked out of the space. I know you've been in contact with him. I know he financed part of your company. I know you were still involved weeks before our wedding. The room buzzed with whispers. Cassandra stepped forward, her hands trembling now. Jeremy, we agreed. No, he cut her off. You agreed. I was lied to. He turned to the crowd again. I'm pulling out of our joint ventures. Effective immediately. I've alerted all our shared investors. Cassandra will no longer be representing our brand. He gasped. You can't. I just did. The hostess looked panicked. A few guests stood up to leave. Claire blinked in disbelief. Cassandra's composure cracked, and for the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely afraid. You're ruining everything, she whispered. Jeremy stepped away. No. I'm finally protecting what matters. He turned and walked toward me, stopped just beside my chair. And without saying a word, he placed his hand gently on my shoulder. He didn't need to say anything more, because in that single gesture, public, quiet, full of weight, he acknowledged everything. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was hesitant, uncertain. But I didn't need their approval. Had my son back. Or so I thought. Because as the room cleared and Cassandra disappeared behind a set of glass doors, my phone buzzed in my clutch. One message. From Dana Wexler, the reporter. Margaret, you need to see this. Turns out Cassandra's not the only one who kept secrets. She attached a PDF file. I opened it slowly, hands trembling once more. And what I read turned my entire world upside down. Because Jeremy wasn't just caught in Cassandra's web. He had spun one of his own. If you're still with me, don't go anywhere. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because next chapter will reveal the devastating truth about my own son. I stared at the screen, unsure if my aging eyes were betraying me. The PDF Dana sent was a scanned copy of an email chain. The subject line read, Offshore account transfer. Urgent. The names in the header stopped my breath. From jeremy.whitley@stuconsultinggroup.com to b.mercer@linwoodentelbank.com. cc. Cassandra.maxwell@combrandlux.com. Date, March 2nd, 8:11 a.m. Asterisk. The message was short, cold. Please finalize the routing of the $650,000 into the Linwood holding account by March 5th. The trust owner's signature will be attached. Cassandra has confirmed all documentation. Let me know when cleared. Below the text, 2 attachments. Trust agreement, Whitley.pdf. Signature final.pdf. I read it again. Then again. That was my name. Margaret Whitley. My signature. My trust. They had moved over $500,000 from an account I had set aside years ago for my medical care and future nursing costs into a private offshore holding. And they had forged my signature to do it. The air in the room thinned. I couldn't feel my hands. I clutched the edge of the table like it might collapse under me. My own son. The one I had just forgiven. The one who had made a public apology. Who held my shoulder in front of all those people. He had taken everything. I picked up my phone and called Dana. "Is this real?" asked my voice hoarse. "It's real," she said, her tone grim. "And I've only scratched the surface." Linwood International flagged the account for suspicious activity. The documents were faxed from an office listed under Cassandra's company, but the metadata in the files trace back to a computer registered in Jeremy's name. Closed my eyes. "I thought it was all her," I whispered. "I thought she pulled him into this mess. But he orchestrated it," Dana finished for me. "At least most of it." "How long?" I asked. "From what I can tell, almost a year. Since before they got engaged." That broke me. I ended the call, walked to the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't weak. She wasn't frail. But she looked like she'd been carved down, like pieces had been chipped away slowly over time. All my life I had believed that love could heal anything. That sacrifice wasn't in vain. That loyalty meant something. But Jeremy had taken my love and turned it into currency. He forged my trust, both literally and legally. He had used my life savings, the very money I'd saved from tutoring, subbing and small pensions, for a life of luxury, deception and power. The apology had been a performance. Cover-up. The brunch wasn't redemption. It was a distraction. I sank to my knees, gripping the edge of the sink, and sobbed. Not because of the money, but because I finally understood something painful and permanent. Jeremy had stopped seeing me as a mother a long time ago. I stayed on that bathroom floor for hours. By the time I emerged, it was dark. The house was quiet, too quiet. My hands trembled as I pulled out every document I owned. Bank statements, trust paperwork, my will. The forged signature page was an exact match. He had copied it from a birthday card I sent him 3 years ago. I recognized the exact flourish. I thought back to that visit. He'd asked for a cup of tea, and I'd stepped away from the kitchen table, leaving my planner open. I remembered it now. He had lingered behind. I thought he was admiring old photos. But he was studying my handwriting. That night I made a new call. To Marie, my lawyer. She answered on the first ring. "Margaret, I need you," I said. "And this time we're not just sending letters. We're pressing charges." Silence. Then, "I'll come first thing in the morning. Bring everything." I sent Dana a thank you text. She replied within seconds. "I'll hold off on publishing. But just know this story has teeth. And it could destroy both of them." I typed back. "Let it destroy them." But the truth was, I wasn't ready to let go of Jeremy yet. Not entirely. So I gave him one last chance. I sent a text. Just 4 words. "Meet me. No cameras." He responded after 5 hours. "Where?" I sent him the address of Gerald's old fishing cabin upstate. No cell signal. No press. Just us. I packed an overnight bag, drove through the night, and arrived before dawn. Lit a fire. Made 2 mugs of tea. And waited. At 6:38 a.m., his car pulled up. He stepped out wearing a coat I bought him for his 30th birthday. He looked tired. Older than he should. When he saw me, he gave a sad smile. "This place brings back memories." "Sit," I said. He did. We were silent for a long time. Then I slid the printed email chain across the table. His face went pale. He didn't even try to deny it. "Mom," he began. I held up my hand. "Don't call me that. Not yet." He sighed. Rubbed his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Why?" I asked. "Why steal from me?" "It wasn't stealing," he said quickly. It was borrowing. Cassandra said the trust wasn't active, that it was just sitting there. We needed capital to lock in investors. She promised we'd pay it back before you noticed. And forging my signature. She said it was just temporary. That we'd swap the documents out later. Stop, I snapped. You're a grown man. You knew what you were doing. You used my love as collateral. And for what? Appearances. Status. Instagram photos. He looked away. I didn't know how to stop it, he said. It all got too big. And when Dana started snooping, I panicked. That's why I did the brunch. I thought if I could make things right in public, maybe I could fix it quietly behind the scenes. I stared at him for a long time. You betrayed me in silence, I said. Then you tried to cover it with applause. Tears welled in his eyes. I was scared. No. You were greedy. He put his head in his hands. I let him sit like that for a long time. Then I stood. You have two choices, I said. 1, I press charges, go public, and you lose everything. 2, you return every cent, dissolve your business, and issue a public statement accepting full responsibility, for both you and Cassandra. He looked up slowly. And what do I get in return? My silence, I said. And a sliver of my mercy. He closed his eyes. Give me 24 hours. You have 12. I walked out, got in my car, and didn't look back. The next day, I received a call from Marie. Margaret, you're not going to believe this. He wired the full amount back. Every cent. With interest. He even included a notarized confession. My knees gave out. And just as I thought the storm had passed, my phone buzzed again. This time a message from Dana. Check the news. Cassandra just got arrested at JFK. Fraud, wire tampering, and falsifying financial records. I turned on the TV. And there she was, handcuffed, silent, her perfect bun unraveling under the flash of cameras. Jeremy wasn't seen with her. But the fallout had just begun. If you think this ends with justice served, think again. Next chapter will reveal who came knocking next, and why what I did afterward shocked even me. Like, comment, and subscribe. The storm isn't over. 3 days after Cassandra's arrest made national headlines, my doorbell rang. It was early. The sky was still a soft gray, the world not yet fully awake. I opened the door expecting the mailman. Instead I found a girl, barely 20, shivering in a hoodie too thin for the spring chill, eyes swollen from crying, holding a duffel bag that looked far too heavy for someone her size. She looked up at me like I was the last person on earth who could help her. Are you Mrs. Margaret Whitley? She asked, her voice small. Yes, I replied cautiously. Who are you? She swallowed hard. I'm Jasmine, she said. Cassandra's sister. I blinked. Excuse me. I didn't know where else to go. I hesitated, torn between instinct and anger. But something in her voice, the cracked desperation, made me step aside. She entered slowly, clutching her bag like a lifeline. I led her to the couch and offered her tea. As I waited for the kettle to whistle, I glanced at her. She looked nothing like Cassandra. Her hair was unkempt, her jeans torn at the knees, and she had the posture of someone who'd been hunched by grief. When I returned, she spoke before I could ask anything. I know what my sister did, Jasmine said. She ruined people, used people, me included. I sat down, cautious. Why come to me? She looked me in the eyes for the first time. Because I think you're the only one who never bought her mask. And because she used your name in something else. Something big. My stomach sank. What did she do? Jasmine pulled a crumpled folder from her duffel and handed it to me. Inside were pages of grant applications, fake scholarship forms, and a forged partnership agreement, with my name signed at the bottom. She used your reputation as a retired educator to apply for government funding, grants for a rural education project, in your name. I stared at the forms. Some dated back months, some more recent. She said you were on board. That you were just a figurehead, Jasmine said. She even made a fake website with your photo. Why are you telling me this? Yes. Tears brimmed in her eyes. Because I worked with her. I helped build that site. I believed in what she told me. And now, I realize I was just another pawn. I exhaled slowly. This betrayal had layers deeper than I imagined. She manipulated you, I said gently. You're not the only one. Jasmine's shoulders trembled. I tried to go to the police, she said. But they told me I'd be treated as a co-conspirator unless I had a formal statement from someone willing to support my side. I sat quietly processing. This girl, this young woman, was a casualty of Cassandra's ambition. Used and discarded, just like I had been. But unlike me, Jasmine hadn't lived a full life. She still had a chance to rebuild. So I made a decision. I'll write you that statement, I said softly. Her eyes widened. You will? Yes. But only if you agree to testify truthfully. Everything you know. No cover-ups. No edits. She nodded eagerly. I will. I swear. And so began another chapter one didn't expect. Helping a victim of my own story find a way out. We worked together over the next week. Marie drew up the legal documents. Jasmine provided records. Emails, screenshots, voice memos. It was painful to hear. Cassandra had been cruel. She'd mocked Jeremy behind his back. Called him useful but slow. Laughed about manipulating me. She had been planning her exit strategy for months. A silent pullout after bleeding us dry. And Jeremy, he didn't know half of it. I debated whether to tell him, whether he even deserved to know. But the decision was made for me when he showed up at my doorstep. Unannounced. He looked broken, thinner, unshaven, hollow. Mom, he said, barely above a whisper. I let him in. He sat on the same couch Jasmine had curled up on just days earlier. I lost everything, he said. Clients pulled out. The media is crucifying me. Cassandra's refusing to talk to investigators. And now I'm under audit. I nodded, saying nothing. I know I deserve this, he said. All of it. Still I was silent. Finally, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. But can you please just tell me? If you still love me? I stared at him. And for the first time since this began, I answered with complete truth. Yes, I said. I love you. But I don't trust you. And until you earn that back, not with words but with a life worth living, I won't protect you from the consequences. He bowed his head. And for once he didn't argue. He just cried. Let him. Because pain is a necessary teacher. And Jeremy still had much to learn. The next day, Jasmine testified in exchange for immunity. Her statement became the key evidence that unraveled Cassandra's remaining shell companies. 3 more arrests followed. The judge denied Cassandra bail. Jeremy wasn't charged, but his assets were frozen pending civil suits. As for me, I was asked to speak on national television. Dana arranged it. A segment titled, How One Mother Fought Back. I almost declined, until I realized I wasn't doing it for revenge anymore. I was doing it for other women, forgotten women who'd been told to stay silent, who were used, manipulated, and discarded by their own blood. And on that stage, under soft studio lights, I spoke clearly. I'm not a hero. I'm a mother. And we have limits too. The anchor leaned forward. What would you say to Jeremy now if he's watching? I looked straight into the camera. I'd say, I still love you. But I love myself more now. And with that, I walked off stage into a world that was watching. But the story didn't end there. Because the week after that interview aired, I received a letter. No return address. Just one sentence inside. I know what Jeremy did before Cassandra. And it was signed. M.C. A new thread. A new mystery. Because Jeremy's betrayal may not have started with Cassandra at all. If you want to know what that letter revealed, don't miss next chapter. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the darkest secret is still buried. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for nearly an hour before I opened it. Just one sentence inside. I know what Jeremy did before Cassandra. Signed. M.C. I reread it 10 times. The paper was unlined. Handwritten in cursive. Not the shaky scribbles of an old hand, but confident, sharp lettering. The kind that belongs to someone with something to say and something to hide. I checked the envelope again. No stamp. No postmark. Which meant it had been hand-delivered. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my temples. My thoughts spun like a carousel. What had Jeremy done, before Cassandra? I picked up the landline and dialed Marie. Someone left a letter, I told her. Anonymous. And I think it's pointing to something else. Something bigger. I paused. Do you think it's a threat? No, I said. A warning. Marie sighed. Margaret, you've opened more cans of worms in the last month than some people do in a lifetime. I'm not looking for trouble, I said. But I think it's already found me. We agreed to meet the next day and discuss a plan. But that night, curiosity got the best of me. I sat at my desk, opened my old laptop, and typed Jeremy Whitley plus scandal into the search bar. Nothing new. Then I narrowed the search. Jeremy Whitley plus college plus fraud. Still nothing definitive. But a discussion thread on a university forum caught my eye. Post from 2008. Short. Anonymous. Some senior swiped our capstone project and pitched it as his own. Got a business grant. Typical entitled trash. There was no name. But it was the same year Jeremy graduated. And I remembered that year well. He had called me one day out of nowhere, saying he was chosen for a prestigious grant. $10,000 for an innovative student-led startup. I had cried tears of joy. But he never told me what the project was. And I never asked. Now I wondered if that grant had been earned at someone else's expense. My heart sank. Had it always been like this? Had he always been this? I barely slept that night. The next morning I met Marie at her office. Her assistant handed me a coffee, and I passed the letter across the desk. Marie read it slowly. M.C. she murmured. Could stand for anything. But this feels personal. Whoever wrote it knows something. I want to find out who they are, I said. Then we follow the old school way, she said. Footwork. We started by checking the building security footage. My porch camera hadn't worked in months, but the neighbor's system did. We reviewed the tape from the day the envelope appeared. And there, just past 7 p.m., was a figure in a gray hoodie and jeans. Blim. Moved quickly. Never showed their face. But they turned slightly at one point. Enough to catch a glimpse of long, curly hair. Not Cassandra. Someone else. Do you recognize her? Marie asked. No, I said. But I know someone who might. Called Jasmine. She met me at a coffee shop that afternoon. Her hair tied in a loose ponytail, looking more at peace than I'd seen her. I showed her the image on my phone. Recognition flashed in her eyes instantly. That's Mariella, she said. Mariella Clark. I frowned. Who is that? She used to work with Cassandra years ago. Our firm. They had a falling out. Cassandra told me she was unstable. That she lied a lot. But Mariella always seemed kind to me. Kind and very quiet. I made a note of the name. That evening I went digging again. Found Mariella's LinkedIn. Dated. No photo. But then I searched her name plus Cassandra Maxwell. And hit pay dirt. An old article from 7 years ago. Up-and-coming PR duo Mariella Clark and Cassandra Maxwell bring fresh voice to luxury branding. There was a photo. 2 young women. Cassandra in a tight white dress, Mariella in black slacks and a blazer, holding champagne flutes. Both smiling, both bright. But the article's URL was dead. Crub. Which meant someone didn't want it found. Called Dana next. I need a favor, I said. She didn't hesitate. Name it. I need you to find Mariella Clark. Within 2 hours she texted me a name, phone number, and address in Yonkers. I hesitated. Then dialed the number. Soft voice answered. Hello. Is this Mariella Clark? Yes. Was. Who's asking? My name is Margaret Whitley. I believe you delivered a letter to my house. Silence. Then. I hoped you'd call. We arranged to meet at a quiet library the next morning. She was already there when I arrived, tucked in a back corner, wearing a navy sweater, glasses, and no makeup. She looked exhausted. Her eyes carried stories too heavy for one lifetime. I'm not proud of everything I've done, she began. I sat across from her. Why did you write me? Because I watched everything you did. I saw you stand up to Cassandra. I saw you expose Jeremy. I thought maybe you'd finally understand what I went through. I'm listening, I said. Mariella took a deep breath. 7 years ago, Cassandra and I were building something real. Our firm had promise. But we needed money. Jeremy was one of our early investors. Small at first. But he wanted in deeper. Cassandra didn't tell you this, but they were involved long before Napa. She met him while you thought he was dating someone else. Froze. You mean Claire? Mariella nodded. Cassandra manipulated him. She flattered his ego, made him feel like a genius. But behind his back, she and I were planning to buy him out and cut him loose. What happened? She turned on me first, said I was dead weight. Then she and Jeremy filed a motion to take full control of the firm's brand assets. Falsified my signature. Said I'd sold my share. They took everything. I was shut out overnight. She pushed a flash drive across the table. I kept records, emails, legal drafts, even the original business plan, with my name on it. Took the drive. What do you want me to do with this? Asked. Whatever you think is right, she said. But if you want to bury them both, that drive will do it. I looked her in the eyes. And I believed her. Because now I understood the full circle. Jeremy had not become corrupted by Cassandra. He had always chased power. She had just been the final act in a lifetime of betrayal. When I got home, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. And what I found there? Letters, receipts, memos, all showing that Jeremy and Cassandra had orchestrated more than just a single fraud. They had stolen an entire company, manipulated banks, burned friends, and it all started with Mariella. But the most devastating file, an audio recording, Jeremy's voice. She's my mother, Cass. She'll never fight me. Yusuf. She'll fold. And Cassandra's reply. Then let her. We need that money. I stared at the screen. A fury deeper than I had ever known simmered in my bones. I picked up the phone and dialed Dana. I'm ready, I said. Publish everything. And then I hung up and watched the sunset from my porch, knowing tomorrow, the world would finally know who my son really was. If you've followed me this far, don't look away now. Because next chapter is where the house of cards crashes. Public trials. Shocking confessions. And the moment Jeremy finally faces everything he ran from. Like, comment, and subscribe. Justice is just beginning. The article dropped at 7:02 a.m. sharp. Dana Wexler didn't hold back. The headline stretched bold across the top of the site. Betrayal in Blood. How Jeremy Whitley and Cassandra Maxwell built an empire on lies, and stole a company from the woman who helped them start it. Underneath it, a composite photo, Jeremy in a suit, Cassandra in handcuffs, and a third younger woman, Mariella Clark. The subhead read, Exclusive. Documents, emails, and audio files reveal years of deception, fraud, and betrayal inside one of New York's most polished branding firms. By 8 a.m. it had over 12,000 shares. By 9:30 a.m. local news stations had picked it up. By noon my house phone didn't stop ringing. I turned it off. I wasn't doing interviews. I wasn't chasing applause. I was waiting. And at 1:18 p.m. the knock came. This time, it wasn't a frightened girl or a guilt-ridden son. It was the FBI. 2 agents. Turn. Blight. They presented a warrant. They were looking for Jeremy. I don't know where he is, I told them honestly. They nodded, took copies of the trust documents, the forged signatures, and Mariella's flash drive. "We have enough," one of them said. "It's just a matter of time now." When they left, I sat on the porch and let the weight of it settle. My son was a fugitive. Not officially, not yet. But the noose was tightening. And that's when I got the call. Block number. But I answered. His voice cracked immediately. "Mom. Where are you?" "Somewhere safe. Don't play games." "I didn't know she was recording us," he whispered. That audio was the first honest thing you've ever said." He was quiet for a long time. "I messed up. You betrayed everyone." "I know." I let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. Finally I spoke. "You need to turn yourself in." "I can't. If I go down, I lose everything." "You already have." There was desperation in his voice now. "Can't you talk to someone? Use the trust, hire a better lawyer. Help me one last time." "No," I said calmly. "This is where it ends. You're my mother. And you stopped being my son the day you forged my name." He didn't respond. So I hung up. He didn't call back. That night I packed a small suitcase. Not because I was running, but because I was needed elsewhere. I took a train upstate to a quiet, private women's shelter. Not for myself. For Jasmine. She had called earlier in the day, saying she wanted to leave New York. Start fresh. She was afraid someone from Cassandra's former life might come looking for her. I told her I'd meet her. We sat on a bench overlooking a lake, and for the first time she looked at peace. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," I said gently. "You saved yourself. I just lit the path." I handed her an envelope, banking info for a small account I opened in her name. A few $1,000s. Enough to start over. She cried. Held her. Because some daughters are chosen, not born. 2 days later, news broke that Jeremy had been detained in Vermont near the Canadian border. He was driving a rented car under an alias. The FBI caught him after he used his real ID to buy gas. He was arrested without incident. And the trial began 4 weeks later. It was a circus. Cameras, press, pundits. Everyone wanted to know how America's brand prince had fallen so far. Cassandra pled guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud and accepted a 7-year sentence. She gave up her company, her penthouse, her designer wardrobe. Jeremy tried to fight. He blamed Cassandra. Then Mariella. And me. But the documents didn't lie. The recordings sealed it. The jury found him guilty on 4 federal counts of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. The judge's final words to him. "Mr. Whitley, you weren't just a businessman. You were a son. And you failed on both counts." I watched from the back of the courtroom. I didn't cry. I didn't stand. I simply turned and walked out. Because in that moment I realized something powerful. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. A door closing. A life turning. A mother choosing peace over pain. I returned home that night to a sunset so golden it looked like the sky had forgiven me. I sat on my porch, sipped warm tea, and exhaled for the first time in months. But then, just as the steam from my cup curled into the air, an envelope was slipped into my mailbox. Handwritten. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Jeremy, 10. Sitting beside me on the back steps, holding a puppy. Smiling. On the back of the photo, one sentence written in that same careful handwriting. "He wasn't always this way." Signed. C. Mariella. And with that, my heart cracked open. Because sometimes, even after betrayal, a part of you still remembers the love. But the final chapter is not about loss. It's about legacy. Next chapter reveals what I did next with everything I had left, and how I turned my pain into something beautiful. Like, comment, and subscribe because the ending may not be what you expect. Grief changes shape. It doesn't disappear. Doesn't shrink. Grows with you. And as I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by quiet walls and a lifetime of memories, I realized something profound. My story wasn't ending with Jeremy's conviction. It was beginning again, this time with me. 2 weeks after the verdict, I visited the old elementary school where I taught 3rd grade for 34 years. The building had changed. The walls now painted in bright murals, security cameras perched in corners, but the smell of pencil shavings and paper still lingered like an old friend. Principal Hughes, a former student of mine, greeted me with open arms. "Mrs. Whitley," he said, tearing up. "You were the reason I became an educator." That hit me harder than I expected. I toured the classrooms, listened to the soft chatter of students learning to read, their little fingers flipping pages with excitement. One girl with wide eyes and a missing front tooth tugged on my sleeve. "Are you the story lady?" she asked. I laughed. "I used to be." And something in me stirred. That night, I pulled out a dusty binder from the back of my closet. Inside were handwritten stories I'd penned over the years. Fables, parables, simple tales with simple morals. I had written them for Jeremy when he was young. They had been forgotten like everything else. But now they were coming back to life. I called Marie and asked about setting up a nonprofit. She was stunned. "You want to start a foundation?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "For children. For women. For those who've been silenced, stolen from, or shoved aside by people they trusted." We filed the paperwork within a week. I called it the Second Thread Foundation, named for the idea that life can unravel, but it can also be stitched again, with stronger thread. I donated a portion of the money Jeremy had repaid, funds that once came from deceit now fueling redemption. With Dana's help, we got coverage on morning shows. Donations poured in. Former students wrote me letters. Jasmine joined as our youth outreach coordinator. And one day, unexpectedly, I received a letter from prison. From Jeremy. It was 10 pages long. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't blame Cassandra. He simply wrote the truth. About the jealousy he felt as a child. About how he'd admired Gerald, but felt suffocated by my love. About how he craved power because it made him feel like he was never small. He ended the letter with this: "I know I can't undo what I did. But I hope you find peace, Mom. And if you ever write one of those children's stories again, maybe let one of the bad guys say sorry." I cried when I read that. Not because I believed him entirely, but because it was the first time he saw me as human again. Months passed. The foundation grew. We launched a mobile library, funded scholarships, built a storytelling program for young girls. Jasmine thrived. Claire got married. Mariella found peace in a new firm of her own, doing honest work. And me. I stood on stage one rainy spring evening, reading one of my old stories to a room full of children at a community center. A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Was that story real?" she asked. "Yes," I smiled. "Every word of it." And I meant it. Because stories, especially the painful ones, don't just live in pages. They live in us. They teach us how to rise, how to fight, how to forgive. Not because those who hurt us deserve it, but because we deserve the freedom that comes with letting go. As I closed the book that night and the children clapped, I looked up to the back of the room and thought I saw Jeremy. Not the man in the suit. Not the fraudster. Boy. The one I held on a porch when his father died. The one I read bedtime stories to. And even though I knew it was just a memory, smiled. Because that boy was still in there somewhere. And that was enough for me to keep going. To keep living. To keep stitching the world back together. One thread at a time. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of your own quiet strength, or made you believe in second chances, like, comment, and subscribe. Your story matters too. And you never know who's waiting to hear it.